Welcome back to Under Baobab Skies. Tonight we journey to the roof of Africa, where the air is thin and clear, and the mountains seem to hold up the very sky. We travel to the ancient highlands of Ethiopia, land of rock-hewn churches, of whispers in Gies, and of a tradition as deep and complex as the roots of the enset tree. Here we speak not of water nor of milk, but of a third kind of liquid, the liquid of transformation, the liquid of time, wine. But this is not the wine of casual feasts or simple merriment. In these highlands, wine is an alchemy. It is the captured sweat of the sun on a grape's skin, the secret nectar of high-altitude blossoms trapped in honey, the patient breath of yeast in the dark. It is a substance that bridges worlds, the earth and the altar, the king and the commoner, the past and the present. To make wine here is to conduct a slow, silent conversation with the year itself, to ask the land for its secrets, and then to wait, in darkness, for the answer to ferment. Think of the monastery cellars, carved into the living rock below chapels, where prayers have risen like incense for 1,000 years. Here, in the cool, eternal dark, barrels do not merely age, they listen. They absorb the vibrations of chanted psalms, the collective hum of devotion, the sighs of penitence. A monk will tell you that the wine of a year of great peace tastes different from the wine of a year of drought or war. The vintage is a liquid memory of the community's spirit. And then there is the wine of kings. Golden, potent honey vintage brewed in shadows by men who have forfeited their own lineage to guard the recipe of a dynasty. This is a drink of such symbolic power that a single sip at a coronation can shape the destiny of a nation. Its formula is a hidden map of the kingdom's soul, known only by scent and touch. Let's pause for a moment. The fire crackles gently as the night breathes around us. In its light, imagine the depth of a clay fermentation pot, the slow, invisible dance of sugars turning to spirit. This is magic of the oldest kind, the kind that requires patience and faith. Tonight, we will descend into the silent, prayer-soaked cellars of the monasteries. We will enter the guarded halls where royal mead is conjured. We will witness the mystical blending day, where taste buds become prophets. And finally, we will sit with a modern winemaker Alem as he stands at a crossroads, holding a clay pot in one hand and a French oak barrel stave in the other, trying to balance the song of his ancestors with the demands of a global palate. This is the story of the winemakers of Ethiopia. It is a story about what happens when you try to bottle time, when you infuse drink with prayer, and when the sacred craft of your forefathers meets the taste of a world thirsty for something it cannot quite name. Join us as we uncover these stories. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe for more journeys under Baobab skies. By the end of this part, you'll understand about the sacred wines of this Ethiopian monastery. First, you must forget everything you think you know about a wine cellar. This is not a basement. It is not a storage room. It is a sanctum, a geologically aligned extension of the church itself, where the very architecture is designed to facilitate a profound communion between prayer and fermentation. By the end of our journey today, you'll see how stone, spirit, and science intertwine in one of the most remarkable winemaking traditions on Earth. Our quest to find this cellar begins not by going down a set of stairs, but by entering the church, not the grand, more recent structure that reaches for the sky, but the original sanctuary, the one carved downwards into the very heart of a mountain of rust-red rock. It's a descent into the earth. With each step, the air grows cooler, damper. The clamor of the outside world fades into a reverent silence, replaced by the echo of your own breath, and the distant, melodic drip of water finding its patient way through ancient stone. After navigating a low, hand-hewn passage, you arrive at a heavy wooden door banded with thick, dark iron. It stands as a silent guardian. This is the entrance. Pushing it open, you are met not with emptiness, but with a palpable presence. It's the darkness of the Earth's belly, the darkness of deep geological time. It takes a moment for your eyes to adjust, and as they do, shapes begin to emerge from the gloom. You see them, rows upon rows of massive barrels. But these are not the uniform factory-made casks you might imagine. Each one is a unique artifact, a character in a silent story. Some are fashioned from ancient blackened oak, their staves held tight by hoops of rusting iron. Others are great clay amphorae, their forms beautifully imperfect, sealed with beeswax and cloth. They don't just sit on the floor. They rest in specially carved niches, hollowed out directly from the rock walls, as if the mountain itself is cradling them. The air here is thick, not with a musty odor, but with a perfume that is profoundly alive. It's a complex, Bocatha, sweet, ethereal scent of evaporating wine. What vintners call the angel's share, mingled with the earthy aroma of damp stone and the deep, resinous fragrance of ancient wood. A single shaft of light might pierce the darkness from a high, narrow slit window, illuminating a swirling galaxy of dust motes. Catching the rich, dark curve of a cask, it feels less like a cellar and more like a tomb where something is not dying, but gestating, waiting for its moment of resurrection. Yet, the most astonishing and crucial feature of this cellar is one that is entirely invisible from within. It is the design, the intentional geometry that governs the placement of every single vessel. You see, directly above this chamber, through meters of solid, living rock, lies the monastery's main sanctuary. The altar stone, the focal point of all worship, is positioned with breathtaking precision directly above a central point in the cellar below. From this unseen epicenter, the barrels and amphorae are arranged in concentric circles or other sacred geometric patterns, radiating outwards like ripples in a pond. The monks here hold a profound belief. They believe that the prayers offered at the altar, above the soaring chants of the Zema, the sacred words of the liturgy, the murmured confessions of the faithful, do not simply dissipate into the air. They do not stop at the stone floor. Instead, they believe these spiritual vibrations travel downward, as water naturally seeks the lowest point. They resonate through the dense rock, permeating the very stone of the cellar, and are absorbed by the waiting wine. This transforms the entire concept of the cellar. It is no longer a passive warehouse. It becomes an active receiver, a spiritual catchment basin. The wine maturing within these vessels is not simply aging in the chemical sense. It is steeping, marinating in the collective devotion, the joys and the sorrows of the entire monastic community. Think of it. A barrel filled during a year of a beloved abbot's passing would be considered a vessel of mourning, its character imbued with a sense of solemn remembrance. Another, filled after a season of miraculous, drought-breaking rains, would be seen as a barrel of pure gratitude, capturing the essence of relief and joy. In this way, the wine becomes a liquid archive, a library of the monastery's emotional and spiritual weather, year after year, century after century. Each vintage tells the story not just of the grape and the soil, but of the human heart. The monk, entrusted with the care of this cellar, holds the title of Megabi. His is a position of immense, quiet responsibility. He is less a vintner in the modern sense and more a custodian of time, a guardian of spirit. His daily rounds are not about checking temperatures with a thermometer or measuring sugar levels with a hydrometer. His work is one of sensory and spiritual attunement. He listens. He walks the silent rows, placing a hand on a cool clay amphora or the rough wood of a barrel. He listens to the quiet, subtle gurgle of fermentation in a newly filled vessel, the sound of life and transformation. He listens for the slow, almost imperceptible sigh of wine breathing through the pores of the wood. But more than that, he listens with his soul. He attunes himself to the prayers from the sanctuary above, feeling their resonance, knowing that they are the most vital, the truest ingredients being added to his sacred charge. His job is to ensure the wine is receptive, to be the bridge between the physical and the metaphysical. He is shepherding not just a beverage, but a sacrament in the making. The wine is not an end in itself. It is a medium, a vessel designed to carry the spiritual essence of this sacred place out into the world. It's a process where faith is not just an abstract belief, but a tangible ingredient, as real and as necessary as the grapes themselves. And it all happens here, in the cool, prayer-soaked darkness, deep within the heart of the mountain, in the ancient highlands of Ethiopia. Deep beneath a monastery carved from living rock lies a cellar where time is not measured by the sun or the moon. Here, the rhythm of life and of wine is dictated by a different clock entirely, the sacred, liturgical clock of the monks praying in the chapel far above. This is a story not just of winemaking, but of a profound and mystical relationship between faith, sound, and the very soul of the grape. The day in the cellar doesn't begin with the dawn's first light. It begins in the pre-dawn chill, when the first prayers, the matins, echo through the stone. As the monks' voices rise in the ancient GS tongue, a solitary figure, the Mugabe, the keeper of the cellar, begins his own silent ritual. He doesn't need sunlight. His world is illuminated by the soft, pure glow of a single beeswax candle. The air, already thick with the earthy perfume of oak, clay, and aging wine, now carries the delicate, honeyed scent of the flame. He moves with a quiet reverence, a silent priest in his own subterranean cathedral. He doesn't speak. Instead, he listens. Placing a gentle hand on the cool, curved surface of each barrel, he feels for a subtle vibration. It's not a sound in the traditional sense, but a presence, a life force. He holds a deep belief, passed down through generations, that the sacred chants from the chapel above don't just fade into the air. They resonate through the very stone of the monastery, traveling downwards like a tuning fork striking a perfect note. And the wine, which he sees as a kind of liquid crystal, aligns itself to that sacred frequency. This is what they call the liturgy of the barrel. It's a philosophy rooted in the idea that matter is not inert. The wood of the cask, the ancient clay of the amphora, the precious liquid held within all, are believed to be receptive, sentient in their own way. The prayers for forgiveness, the psalms of praise, the solemn readings from the holy book, the mets of these are not just words floating away. They are vibrations, powerful intentions, waves of spiritual energy that soak down through the earth and stone. It's believed this constant immersion in sacred sound softens the wine's tannins, integrates its complex flavors, and gently smooths away any rough, youthful arrogance. The process transforms the wine, guiding it toward a harmonious, contemplative maturity. You could age a wine in a modern, temperature-controlled warehouse, and it might be technically perfect. But a wine aged here, under the very foundation of the altar, is considered something more. It is considered sanctified. Imagine the scene. The Mugabe in the dim, flickering light of his candle, his head bowed, his ear pressed gently against the side of a large oak barrel. He's listening, but not with his ears alone. He's listening with his entire being, feeling the faint, echoing vibrations of the monastic chanting as they filter down from the world above, becoming one with the slow, silent heartbeat of the wine. The Mugabe also keeps a calendar, but you won't find the names of months on it. His calendar is marked by the cycles of feast days and fasts that define the monastic year. During the great fasts, like Hudadi, the Lenten fast, the entire monastery enters a period of deep penitence and stillness. The monks abstain from all animal products, and a quiet, reflective mood settles over the community. Down in the cellar, this stillness is mirrored. The work becomes minimal. The Mugabe sees this as a time of rest for the wine as well, a period for it to settle and integrate the energies it has absorbed. But on the great feast days, the atmosphere transforms completely. During Timkat, the Epiphany, or Mezcal, the finding of the true cross, the entire monastery erupts in joyous celebration, and the cellar becomes an extension of that joy. On these special occasions, the Mugabe might approach a small, specially marked vessel perhaps, from a year of particular grace, or a bountiful harvest. With great care, he will open it and allow just a thimbleful of its precious contents to evaporate into the air. It's a beautiful, symbolic gesture offering of the cellar's own stored happiness, its liquid memory of joy, to the festivities taking place above. Over many decades, each barrel and pot in the cellar develops what the Mugabe knows as its own personality. These aren't just inanimate containers to him. They are individuals with unique characters. In the north corner rests the singing barrel. Its fermentation is always particularly active, and the steady stream of bubbles rising through the airlock sounds like a soft, continuous choir. It's a sound of life, of transformation, made audible. Then there is the old silent one, a clay pot so ancient that its origins are lost to memory. It never makes a sound, its fermentation a deep internal process. But the wine drawn from it is legendary. It is said to bring a profound and lasting quiet to the mind of the drinker, a taste of the deep peace in which it was born. These are not seen as mere superstitions. To the Mugabe, they are the observed, documented characteristics of vessels that have spent lifetimes in communion with prayer, their very substance altered by the sacred vibrations. Let's just pause and try to absorb that for a moment. Picture it, a constant, gentle rain of sacred sound falling through solid rock, day after day, year after year, onto sleeping wine. This cellar is not a silent tomb. It's a resonating chamber, humming with a frequency too deep for human ears to register consciously, but felt in the very structure of the liquid. It's a frequency of faith, slowly, patiently, working its divine alchemy on the liquid soul of the grape. Perhaps the most critical part of this entire liturgy is the turning of the barrels. In modern winemaking, barrels are turned to ensure uniform exposure to the lees, the sediment at the bottom. But here, the motivation is entirely different. The turning is synchronized with the liturgical calendar. A barrel might be given a quarter revolution on the feast day of a particular saint, its guardian saint for that year. It might be tilted at a slight angle during a week of penitential prayers, a physical expression of humility. Each movement is a deliberate, conscious interaction. It's a physical dialogue between the keeper and the kept, a way of aligning the vessel, and therefore the wine within it, with the spiritual rhythm of the entire community. This is the key. The wine is not just asterisk in asterisk the monastery. It is asterisk of asterisk the monastery. Its maturation is a parallel spiritual journey. It is guided by the exact same celestial and liturgical cycles that guide the monks in their cells high above. It fasts when they fast, it celebrates when they celebrate. It matures not just in flavor and aroma, but in spirit, becoming a liquid embodiment of the devotion that surrounds it. It's a testament to a worldview where the sacred is not separate from the material, but infused within it, transforming the simple act of aging wine into a profound act of prayer. In the ancient cellars of a secluded monastery, time moves differently. Here, deep beneath the earth, rows of oak barrels rest in profound silence. They are not merely containers for fermenting grapes. They are vessels of memory, silent listeners absorbing the very soul of the community that surrounds them. For years, sometimes decades, they wait. This isn't a process measured by scientific instruments or chemical analysis. There are no hydrometers or pH strips. The readiness of a wine is determined by something far more subtle, a consensus of feeling, a deep, intuitive knowing shared between the elder monks and their spiritual guide, the Megabi. It is a quiet agreement that the wine has absorbed all it can from the wood, the air, and the silent prayers that echo through the stone walls. Its time of listening is over. It is now ready to speak. The moment of this speaking is a sacred ceremony known as Wettit Ale, the opening of the year. It is an event of profound significance, never undertaken lightly or alone. The abbot, the Megabi, and the most senior monks descend into the hushed coolness of the cellar. A single barrel is chosen, one whose vintage holds a special relevance to a current event, or perhaps commemorates a significant anniversary from the monastery's long history. The chosen barrel is carefully moved to the center of the space, its weathered staves illuminated by the soft, flickering glow of candlelight. A prayer is offered, not for the quality of the wine itself, but for the memories, the joys, and the sorrows it holds within its dark heart. Then, in a moment of focused reverence, the Megabi takes a wooden mallet and, with a single, clean, resonant blow, drives the tap into the barrelhead. The seal of years is broken. The first glass is drawn, its color a deep, mysterious crimson. It is not tasted immediately. The act of observation is part of the ritual. The glass is held up to the candlelight, its hue scrutinized by knowing eyes. Is it the deep ruby of a year blessed with gentle rains, or the lighter, almost garnet shade that speaks of a time of drought and struggle? The monks swirl the wine, watching the legs, the viscous tears that slide down the interior of the glass. Each one a testament to the wine's body and history. They lean in, inhaling the first aromatic whispers released from the surface, a bouquet not of fruit or spice, but of time itself. But the true test, the moment of revelation, is in the tasting. The air in the cellar is thick with anticipation, a shared breath held in a moment of communal memory. The abbot receives the first glass. He is the guardian of the community's history, and it is his palate that will first decipher the story held within the wine. He raises the glass slowly, his movements deliberate and full of grace. He does not swallow quickly or thoughtlessly. He lets the liquid rest on his tongue, cradling it in his mouth, allowing it to coat every surface. His eyes close, shutting out the world of the cellar to open an inner landscape of the past. The other monks watch his face, their expressions a mixture of solemnity and quiet expectation. They are not looking for a simple sign of pleasure, a smile, or a nod of approval. They are searching for a flicker of recognition, a sign that a memory has been unlocked. After a long moment, a soft sound escapes the abbot's lips. "Ah," he might say, his voice a whisper of wonder that barely disturbs the silence. "The year of the great frost. I can taste the sharp, clean air of that spring morning, and the patience we all learned waiting for the thaw." His eyes might mist over as the sensation transports him back decades. Another elder takes a sip from his own glass, his brow furrowed in concentration. He nods slowly. Yes, he agrees, his voice raspy with age and emotion. "And I can feel the resilience of the vines that survived. There is a strength here, a green stubbornness just beneath the fruit." A younger monk might then taste it and say, "I wasn't here then, but I can feel the community's hope when the sun finally returned." This is the profound miracle of the monastic wine. The tasters do not describe the typical flavors of berry, cherry, or oak that a sommelier might identify. They describe events, they describe emotions. They taste the collective, shared experience of the entire community from the specific year the grapes were picked and pressed. It is a psycho-spiritual transcript of a year's journey, preserved and translated through alcohol and tannin. A wine from a year marked by internal conflict or external threat might possess a subtle, metallic edge on the palate, a faint sharpness that recalls the tension and anxiety of that time. A vintage from a year when a beloved elder passed away might have a profound sweet sadness to it, a finish that lingers on the tongue like a cherished, bittersweet memory you can't quite let go of. The wine becomes a time capsule of feeling. For the monks, this experience is the ultimate validation of their entire way of life. It is tangible proof that their devotion, their daily practices, the prayers chanted in the rock-hewn church above, and the very spirit of their sacred space have been woven into the wine's essence. They believe that the vibrations of their chants, the focused intention of their silent meditation, and the collective emotional state of the community are literally absorbed by the resting wine. Drinking it is therefore not an act of simple consumption or indulgence. It is an act of communion. It is a way of connecting with their own past, of honoring and integrating the joys and sorrows, the triumphs and the trials that have forged their community over generations. A single sip can evoke a vivid personal memory from decades past, bringing a tear to a wrinkled cheek as an elder relives a moment he thought was lost to time. When the final drop of this precious liquid has been drawn from the barrel, the vessel's service is not forgotten. An empty barrel is never just washed out and refilled. It is retired with the same respect given to an elder who has completed their life's work, having served as a container not just for wine, but for history and spirit. Its wood is considered sacred. It might be carefully disassembled, and the staves used to carve a cross for the chapel, a small icon for a monk's cell, or perhaps a frame for a sacred text. In this way, the vessel that held the memory continues to be a part of the monastery's spiritual life, its purpose transformed, but its sanctity preserved. It has fulfilled its duty as a silent witness and is now given a new form to continue its service. This tapped wine, so rich with meaning, is used with great care and sparsity. It is reserved only for the most significant sacraments, high feasts, and pivotal moments in the monastery's calendar. To drink it is to ingest a living chapter of the community's story. It is to be reminded that time, in their understanding, is not a straight line, moving relentlessly forward from past to future. It is a spiral, or a circle, where the past is not gone, but remains present, accessible to those who know how to listen. The wine is the key, a key forged from silence, from prayer, from the patient, watchful waiting that defines their existence. With this key, a moment from long ago can be unlocked, brought back into the present moment, tasted, felt, and understood anew with the wisdom of the intervening years. It is a connection between the cellar below and the sacrament above, the earth and the heavens, the past and the present, all made complete in a single, sacred sip. While the monks sought enlightenment in silent stone monasteries, another world of wine existed, shrouded not in holy silence, but in royal secrecy. Deep within the fortified heart of the king's compound, a potent brew was crafted. This was not the wine of grapes, but of honey, the legendary Tej, the wine of kings. And its makers were not monks, but a unique and solemn brotherhood. The eunuch brewmasters. The creation of this role was born from a brutal, almost cruel, logic. The king's Tej was far more than a simple beverage. It was a potent symbol of his vitality, a liquid manifestation of his divine right to rule, the very essence of his reign captured in a golden, fermented elixir. The recipe was a state secret, guarded as fiercely as any military strategy or battle plan. Who, then, could be entrusted with such a profound and dangerous secret? The answer was as pragmatic as it was severe. Men with no families of their own, men whose loyalty could never be divided by the pull of a wife, the future of children, or the ambitions of a lineage. Men who owed their entire existence to the throne, and whose personal future was inextricably, irreversibly tied to its stability. And so, the royal brewmasters were chosen. Selected as young boys, they underwent a process that severed them from the common path of men. They were castrated and then sworn into a lifetime of isolated, dedicated service. Their world shrank to the confines of the royal compound. Their purpose narrowed to a single, sacred task. These brewmasters lived apart, residing in a separate, walled quarter nestled within the sprawling royal grounds. Their homes were strategically placed right beside the sacred apiaries, the source of their craft. Their existence was a sensory tapestry woven from a few distinct threads. The constant, hypnotic buzzing of thousands of bees, the sweet, heady aroma of fermenting honey that hung perpetually in the air, and the quiet rhythmic clink of clay vats and pottery jars. They were well provided for, even respected in a distant, almost fearful way. Yet, they were profoundly separate islands of solitude within the bustling sea of the court. Communication was sparse. They spoke little, even amongst themselves, for a crucial part of their oath was to never discuss the craft outside of the ritualized, practical steps of its creation. Their profound knowledge wasn't passed down through written texts or spoken lectures. It was transmitted through the silent language of shared action, a lineage of pure demonstration. A guiding touch on a younger apprentice's hand, a deep, meaningful sniff of a new batch of honey, a knowing glance exchanged. Over the bubbling froth of a fermentation vat, this was their school, their library, their entire world of communication. Each gesture was a word, each action a sentence in the silent saga of the king's wine. Their primary and most sacred charge was the royal apiary. This was no ordinary collection of beehives. The honey, destined for the king's tej, came from a very specific strain of bees. Bees that foraged exclusively on rare, high-altitude wildflowers. These blossoms, it was said, held the pure clarity of the mountain air and the resilient strength of the thin, powerful sunshine that nourished them. The brewmasters were not just keepers of the bees. They were their guardians, their companions. They tended to the hives themselves, moving with a grace and calm that seemed to transfer to the insects. They would sing to the bees in low, humming, monotonous tones, ancient melodies believed to soothe the colony and imbue the resulting honey with a blessing of peace and potency. This connection was so deep, so integral to the kingdom's spiritual and political health, that an attack on a royal brewmaster was not seen as an assault on a mere servant. It was considered a direct attack on the king's own essence, a metaphysical blow against the crown itself. It was a crime of the highest order, an act of treason punishable by the most severe means imaginable. The brewmaster's body, like the king's, was sacrosanct. Let's pause here for a moment and truly consider the life of one of these men. Imagine making a choice, or having it made for you, to surrender the most fundamental human potential for creation, to give up the possibility of children, of a family, of a lineage that carries your name into the future. And for what? To become the solitary guardian of a different kind of creation, to exchange a personal, biological future for the eternal, cyclical future of a royal recipe. These men were, in essence, the living locks on the kingdom's most precious flavor. Their very bodies a testament to the security of the secret they held. Their profound isolation became their greatest strength. Stripped of all outside allegiances, with no family drama or village politics to distract them, Their senses became incredibly, almost supernaturally, refined. A seasoned brewmaster could tell if a batch of tej was ready for the next stage simply by the precise musical pitch of its fizzing. He could identify which mountain valley a particular batch of honey came from by its scent alone, distinguishing notes of wildflowers and stone undetectable to an ordinary nose. His hands, constantly immersed in honey, water, and esoteric herbs, developed an almost mystical sensitivity. He could feel minute variations in temperature and viscosity that no instrument could measure. He was not a cook, not a mere craftsman. He was a living sensor, a biological instrument perfectly tuned to the subtle symphony of fermentation, the slow, quiet alchemy of power. And it was he who held the keys, not just metaphorically, but literal, heavy, ornate iron keys. These keys unlocked the storerooms, the dark, cool cellars where the future of the dynasty quietly bubbled and matured in clay vats, waiting for the moment it would grace the king's table. The process began in the apiary. The brewmaster, his face shielded by a simple veil of fine muslin, would move among the hives like a phantom. He wouldn't use harsh smoke, but instead a gentle smouldering of aromatic herbs, lavender and mountain thyme to calm the bees. The air would be thick with this fragrant smoke and the low hum of the hive, the insects docile and trusting around him. He'd carefully select the frames, heavy with honeycombs that glowed like amber jewels in the sunlight. The backdrop to this sacred harvest was always the stunning, misty highlands, a panorama of peaks and valleys that seemed to confirm the divine nature of his work. Back in the brewery, the work continued with monastic precision. The honey wasn't simply dumped into vats. It was handled with reverence. We see the brewmaster's hands, pale and meticulously clean. Testing the honey, he would dip a smooth, worn wooden paddle into a large earthenware bowl, lifting it to watch the golden stream fall. His entire focus is on this single action, the way the honey drips, the thickness of the strand, the way it coils upon itself in the bowl below. It's a sacred touch, a moment of deep communion between the maker and his medium. This isn't just a quality check, it's a ritual. The honey was then mixed with pure spring water, drawn from a protected source high in the mountains. And then came the secret ingredient, known only as gesho, a type of glossy-leafed buckthorn that acted as a bittering agent and catalyst for fermentation. The exact species, the time of harvest, the method of drying these were the core secrets guarded by the Brotherhood. The mixture was then poured into large clay vats, each one covered with a heavy lid but not sealed, allowing the gases of fermentation to escape. For weeks, the brewmasters would watch over these vats. They'd listen to the bubbling, smell the changing aromas, and occasionally dip a long, slender tasting rod into the mixture. Their expressions would be calm, detached, and utterly focused, their minds interpreting the subtle signals of the living liquid. Finally, when the fizzing subsided to a gentle murmur and the aroma reached its peak complexity, the tej was ready. It was carefully strained through fine cloth into ornate clay flagons, stoppered and sealed with wax bearing the royal crest. A portion was taken to the king's taster, another official whose life depended on his palate and his resilience. Only after it was deemed safe would the flagon be presented to the king, often by the head brewmaster himself, in a silent, formal ceremony. To drink the tej was to partake in the very power of the land. It was said to grant clarity of thought, strength of body, and a connection to the divine spirit of the kingdom. When a king ruled long and well, the people would whisper that it was the strength of his tej. A credit to the silent, solitary men who dedicated their entire lives to its creation. They were the unseen, unsung pillars of the throne, their legacy not in children, but in the golden, intoxicating continuity of the dynasty itself. They held no power, yet the kingdom's power flowed through their hands. Step into the silent, hallowed halls of the royal brewery. Imagine the air, thick with a perfume that's at once floral, earthy, and profoundly mysterious. This is the scent of the 9 spices, the very soul of the king's tej, the honey and water. They are the body and blood of this sacred mead. But these 9 spices, they are its spirit. There is no written recipe. To write it down would be to risk its discovery, to make it mortal. Instead, this precious knowledge is held in the collective muscle memory and the olfactory senses of a select brotherhood of brewmasters. The spices themselves are stored in individual, unmarked clay pots. Their contents are known only by the subtle variations in a pot's shape, its unique feel in the hand, and the distinct scent that seeps through its sealed lid. These are not just ingredients, they are secrets given form. The master brewmaster, known as the Tej, knows them all by heart. His hands, illuminated by a single shaft of light in the dark storeroom, can feel the shape and weight of a pot, his eyes closed, identifying each one by touch alone. He can tell you of gesho, the bitter leaf that provides balance and preservation, the very backbone of the brew. He knows koririma, a type of cardamom with a smoky, citrus depth, which they call the wisdom. And there is tenna, adam, sharp and almost medicinal, believed to ward off evil spirits from the brew. It is the protector. But the other 6? These are secrets so closely guarded that their common names are never even spoken aloud within these walls. They are known only by their functions, their essence. They are called the awakener, the binder, the singer, the dreamer, the memory, and the crown. Each name hints at a power, a purpose that goes far beyond simple flavor. Each one is a chapter in the story this wine tells. The blending of the tej is a ritual of precise choreography, a sacred dance performed only during a specific phase of the moon, when the cosmic tides are just right. The Tej works alone, sequestered in the innermost blending chamber, a sanctuary where the spirit of the wine is born. He begins by mixing honeys from different apiaries, each one a taste of the kingdom's varied landscapes, from the sun-drenched lowlands to the cool, misty highlands. This blend is the foundation, a liquid map of the realm itself. Then, with the patience of a scribe copying a holy text, he adds the spices. This is not a process of measurement, of cups and spoons. It is an art of intuition. He adds them by the pinch, by the handful, by the length of time a bundle is steeped in the golden liquid. He works in utter silence, his movements fluid and certain, as if guided by the hands of all the brewmasters who came before him, their collective wisdom flowing through his fingertips. Each spice has its moment, its grand entrance in the story of fermentation. The gesho goes in first, to set the stage and prepare the way. The awakener is added just as the first delicate bubbles begin to rise, a sign that the brew is coming to life. The singer is stirred in during the full, frothy height of fermentation, when the mixture is alive and churning, to give the wine its voice, its joyful expression, and finally, the crown, the most potent and secret of all the spices. It is added last, just before the great clay fermentation vats, known as day, are sealed. This final act signifies the king's ultimate authority over the finished product, the final seal on a liquid decree. The air around the massive vats shimmers with the heat of fermentation, the brew glowing a luminous golden brown as the Tej stirs it with a long, carved wooden paddle. Let's just pause here for a moment. Imagine the weight of that knowledge. To hold in your mind and body the exact proportions and the precise timing of 9 flavors that it was believed could bless or curse an entire reign. This recipe was more than a set of instructions. It was a metaphysical map of kingship itself. Each spice represented a pillar of rule. The bitter truths from Gesho, the deep wisdom of Koririma, the protective strength of Tena Adam. Then came the awakening energy, the binding unity, the joyful expression, the prophetic vision of the dreamer, the lasting legacy of the memory, and finally, the crowning authority. It was all there in a single cup of honey wine. This secret was both their power and their prison. A brewmaster who failed, whose batch turned to vinegar, or simply failed to impress the royal palate, was not executed. That would risk the secret being lost forever, or worse, escaping the compound. Instead, his fate was a living death. He was condemned to a lifelong vow of silence, confined to the brewery compound for the rest of his days, never to touch the spices again. His hands, once the keepers of a sacred art, would remain still. You might see him sitting in a sunlit courtyard, watching a younger man work from a distance, his eyes holding the memory of the spices he can no longer touch, his knowledge dying with him, incomplete. The pressure for perfection was absolute. It was a silent, terrifying force that hung over every bubble and every froth in the sacred brewery. They weren't just making wine, they were weaving the very flavor of divine right, bottling the essence of power and tradition. The legacy of a kingdom rested not on armies or edicts, but on the delicate balance of 9 secret spices, held in the hands and hearts of the silent brotherhood of the Alaka. This story of the royal Tej reminds us that some of the world's greatest treasures aren't gold or jewels, but knowledge passed down through generations, a living tradition that you can taste, smell, and feel. It is a testament to the idea that the most profound things in life are often the ones that are never written down. The royal Tej was a living chronicle, a liquid history. It was brewed not for casual enjoyment or lavish feasts, but for a single, defining moment. For years, sometimes for the entire duration of a king's reign, it would mature in a sealed clay vat called a day, deep within the royal brewery. It waited, untouched, for its destiny, the coronation of the king's successor. On that pivotal day, the air in the brewery wasn't one of celebration, but of focused dread. The Alaka Tej, the master of the royal mead, along with his most trusted assistants, would approach the chosen day. Its wax seal, undisturbed for a generation, was a testament to the patience and tradition it embodied. This sacred vat wasn't carried by soldiers in shining armor or by royal guards. It was carried in a solemn procession to the coronation hall by the brewmasters themselves. This was a powerful, silent statement. It was a reminder to all, especially the new king, that true power was something that was served, not seized. It was cultivated, cared for, and presented with humility and expertise. The hands that made the kingdom's most sacred drink were the ones to deliver it, linking the craft of the common man to the divine right of the king. As they entered the hushed hall, every eye would turn. Before the assembled nobility, the highest clergy, and the most powerful figures in the realm, the young king would be seated upon the throne. The Alaka Tej, the brewmaster, would walk forward, his steps measured and deliberate. He would kneel before his new sovereign, not as a mere servant, but as a guardian of tradition. In his hands, he would present a single, beautifully carved drinking horn, a barrel crafted from the horn of a wild oxan object of both natural beauty and immense symbolic weight. Then came the moment of truth. The Alaka Tej would carefully break the ancient wax seal. The sound, a soft crackle, would echo in the silent hall, a sound not heard for decades. He would then draw the first portion of the aged, golden Tej. As the liquid poured, a complex and heady aroma would fill the air. It was a scent that defied simple description. It smelled of ancient honey, harvested from blossoms known only to the bees of the highlands. It carried notes of mysterious spices, the secret gesho leaves, and something else, the very essence of time itself, captured in a bottle. The young king would take the horn. The whole would hold its collective breath. All eyes were fixed on his face, his expression. This was the final, unscripted test of his coronation. This was more than just a ceremony. It was an act of communion. The first sip wasn't a celebratory gulp or a toast. It was a deep, personal connection with the legacy he was about to inherit. He was, in that moment, tasting the history of his own kingdom. The brewmasters, standing silently to the side, watched with an intensity that bordered on painful. Their life's work, and the work of their fathers before them, culminated in this single swallow. They were trained to look for the subtlest of signs. A slight widening of the eyes would signal awe, a recognition of the profound depth and complexity of the drink. A slow, thoughtful swallow would indicate acceptance that the king was taking this burden, this legacy, into himself willingly. A faint, almost imperceptible nod of approval would show understanding. This was the best possible outcome. These signs foretold a reign in harmony with the land, its people, and its long-storied history. It meant the new king's spirit was aligned with the spirit of the kingdom. But there was another possibility, an outcome so dreaded it was spoken of only in whispers. The omen of a difficult reign was a cough. A sharp, involuntary splutter would be a terrible sign. A grimace, a flicker of distaste across the king's face, would send a chill through the hall. A moment of hesitation, followed by a forced, difficult swallow. This was the worst of all. Such a reaction suggested that the king's very spirit was at odds with the essence of his kingdom. The essence so perfectly captured and preserved in the royal tej. This belief was deeply ingrained. It wasn't superstition. It was a profound understanding of symbolism. The wine was seen as a mirror to the king's soul. It was believed that a negative reaction foreshadowed a reign of conflict, of drought, of misfortune and strife. The tej itself was a complex balance. It was sweet from the honey, but had a bitter, earthy undertone from the gesho. It was smooth, yet it had a spicy kick. It was a liquid metaphor for the reality of ruling the highlands, a reality that was itself a complex mixture of sweet triumphs and bitter challenges. A king who could unappreciate the drink was a king who might not be fit to handle the intricate, often difficult, reality of power. If the sip was successful, a wave of relief would pass through the hall. The king, having proven his palate was aligned with the palate of power, had passed the test. The beryl horn was then passed first to the abuna, the high priest, and then to the key nobles of the realm. This act of sharing was not about getting a drink. It was about sharing the royal essence, a ritual that bonded them all to the new reign, sealing their loyalty and shared destiny under the new king. The remainder of the precious tej in the day was never drunk in celebration. It was far too sacred for that. It was carefully returned to the brewery, its seal replaced. It would be used in tiny, almost homeopathic amounts over the coming years for only the most solemn occasions. A single drop might be added to the ink used to sign a major peace treaty. A small amount might be used to seal a sacred oath between the king and a powerful lord. Its physical power was diluted over time, but its symbolic potency, its connection to the coronation and the king's legitimacy, remained undiminished until the very last drop was gone. And what of the day? The clay vessel that had held this liquid legacy, once empty, its great work was done. It would be ritually cleansed with blessed water and herbs, not to prepare it for a new batch, but to purify it after its sacred duty. It would then be stored in a place of honor within the brewery. It would never be used to make royal tej again. It had served its purpose. It had held the libation that sealed one reign and tested the next. It was a vessel of transition, an artifact that had witnessed the seamless, or sometimes troubled, handover of the sacred flavorful burden of kingship. Its retirement marked the successful transfer of power, a silent monument to continuity and the enduring taste of history. This incredible tradition shows us how something as seemingly simple as a drink can be woven into the very fabric of a culture's identity, power, and sense of history. It wasn't just honey wine, it was a test, a sacrament, and a mirror for the soul of a king. Far from the silent intensity of the royal brewery, in the sun-drenched highlands where village vineyards clung to terraced slopes, another sacred wine ceremony unfolded. This was a ritual that belonged not to kings, but to the community, a tradition woven into the very fabric of their lives. The annual Sacred Blending Day, or Quarter Wind, was a moment when the practical art of winemaking collided with the mystical art of divination. A day when the future of the village was tasted on the tongue. The ceremony was presided over by the village's KSIs, their priest, a figure of deep spiritual authority. Alongside him was a council of elders known as the Awaragna, which translates to the tasters. But these were no ordinary connoisseurs, and their role extended far beyond simply judging the quality of the wine. They were spiritual conduits, tasked with a responsibility that weighed heavily upon them. In the week leading up to the event, they underwent a rigorous purification process, preparing their bodies and souls for the sacred duty ahead. This purification was a demanding ordeal. They fasted, abstaining completely from meat and strong spices, anything that might linger on the palate or cloud their senses. Each day, they bathed in the cold, clear water of mountain springs, a physical act of cleansing that mirrored the internal purification they sought. Long hours were spent in meditation and prayer, a deliberate effort to empty their minds of all personal concerns. They had to release themselves from the reputations of the local vineyards, from the subtle biases of friendships and the quiet sting of rivalries among the growers. Their goal, their singular focus, was to become empty vessels, as neutral and receptive as the unadorned clay pots that held the new wine. They had to shed their individual identities to become a collective instrument of the divine. On the morning of the ceremony, as the first rays of the highland sun streamed through the windows of the simple village church, the final, crucial step of their preparation took place. They were blindfolded. Strips of clean, undyed linen were tied carefully over their eyes by the Kess's assistants. This act was profoundly symbolic. The blindfold severed the last remaining link between sight and prejudice. In the world of the Awaragna, perception was a potential corruption. A wine from the wealthy landowner's fertile valley plot, known for its consistent quality, could not be favored over the wine from the poor farmer's stony, windswept hill. In the dark, all wines were equal. All that remained was their essence, their spirit, their unadorned truth. The atmosphere in the church was one of hushed reverence. The air was cool and smelled of old stone, frankincense, and the faint, sweet promise of new wine. The elders, their faces serene and their hands resting patiently on their knees, sat in silent contemplation. They were then led, one by one, to a long, rough-hewn wooden table that dominated the center of the room. Upon it sat a row of identical, unmarked clay cups. Each cup was filled with a sample from one of that year's batches of wine, a liquid tapestry representing the collective effort of the entire community. These wines came from every corner of the parish. Some were from north-facing slopes that saw little sun, producing a tart, sharp vintage. Others came from sheltered valleys, thick with morning mist, which yielded a softer, more rounded flavor. Each sample told a story of the soil, the weather, and the hands that had tended the vines. The identity of each cup was a closely guarded secret, known only to the Kesses. He had catalogued them meticulously, marking the bottom of each cup with a secret symbol that corresponded to its origin. a code only he could decipher. The first taster, an old man with a face like a beautiful, weathered map of the Highlands, was guided to the table. His hands, calloused and gnarled from a lifetime of work, found the first cup with a gentle, practiced touch. The silence in the room was so deep you could almost hear the dust motes dancing in the shafts of sunlight. He lifted the small clay vessel, his movements slow and deliberate. He didn't swirl it in the way a modern sommelier would, to aerate it and release its bouquet. Instead, he held it steady beneath his nose, inhaling deeply. He was not just smelling the wine, he was gathering its soul, its spirit, into his own breath. Then, with his lips slightly parted, he sipped. The wine rested on his tongue. He didn't swallow immediately. His head tilted slightly, as if listening to a faint, distant music. The other Awaragna sat motionless, their blindfolded faces turned towards him, sharing in the moment through some unseen connection. Was this wine joyful or sorrowful? Was it a wine of abundance or a wine of struggle? He was tasting for character, for feeling, for the very life force contained within the liquid. The wine from the rocky soil might speak of resilience and strength, while the wine from the misty valley might whisper of gentleness and peace. Each sip was a communion, a conversation with the land itself. After a long moment, he would lower the cup and speak, his voice soft but clear in the quiet church. His words were not a critique of tannins or acidity. He would speak in metaphors, in impressions. This one carries the laughter of the harvest, he might say. Or, I taste a journey in this one, a long walk under a hot sun. Another elder would be led forward to taste the same wine, adding their own interpretation. A third would follow. Their descriptions would layer upon one another, creating a composite portrait of the wine's spiritual identity. This was not about finding the best wine in a competitive sense. It was about understanding the unique contribution of each batch. The KSs listened intently, making no comment, his face unreadable. He was the keeper of the secrets, the one who held the key, connecting their mystical pronouncements to the physical reality of the vineyards. The process was repeated for every single cup on the table. It was a slow, meditative ritual that could last for hours. The Awaragna tasted their way through the entire parish, through the collective hopes, fears, and labors of their community, all distilled into the deep purple-red liquid. Once every sample had been tasted and described, the final and most sacred part of the Queretawing began. The blending, based on the collective impressions of the Awegna, the KSIs would now make his pronouncement. He would announce which wines were to be blended together to create the sacred wine for the coming year's religious ceremonies, and which would be designated for communal feasts and everyday consumption. His decision was seen as divinely guided, channeled through the purified senses of the blindfolded elders. He might declare, the resilience of the stony hill must be blended with the gentleness of the misty valley. The joy of the southern slope shall temper the seriousness of the north. He was not just creating a balanced flavor profile. He was weaving a spiritual tapestry. He was blending the fortunes and characteristics of the community itself into a single, unified whole. The final blend was a prayer in liquid form, an embodiment of the community's desired harmony and balance for the year to come. This sacred blend was more than just wine. It was a symbol of unity. It represented the idea that the strength of one family could support the struggle of another, that the abundance of a fertile plot was meant to be shared with those whose land was less forgiving. It was a tangible reminder that they were all connected, all part of the same story, their lives intertwined like the vines on the terraced hills. The Querta wind was a powerful ritual that reinforced the bonds of community. turning the simple act of making wine into a profound act of faith, divination, and togetherness. It ensured that every member of the village, from the wealthiest landowner to the poorest farmer, had a place at the table and a role in the sacred life of their community. Have you ever read a wine description and thought, what on earth are they talking about? Notes of blackcurrant, a hint of old leather, a whisper of cigar box. It can feel a little pretentious, can't it? But what if I told you there's a different way to understand wine? A way that goes beyond flavor and into the very soul of the land it came from. Today, we're going to explore a story, a tradition where wine isn't just a drink. It's a landscape, a weather report, a prophecy. Imagine a quiet, sun-drenched room. In the center, a group of elders sit, their eyes covered by simple blindfolds. Before them are several unmarked cups of wine. They are the village's most respected tasters. But you won't hear them talk about fruit, or oak, or tannins. That language is for merchants, for the outside world. Here, in the sacred silence of the blindfold, a different vocabulary emerges. They are not merely tasting fermented grape juice. They are drinking the emotional and environmental biography of a specific piece of land over a specific year. A hush falls over the room. The first elder, a man with a deep, resonant voice, slowly lifts a cup to his lips. He takes a small sip, letting the liquid rest on his tongue. The silence stretches thick with anticipation. After what feels like an eternity, he speaks, his voice a low rumble. This one, he begins. It is from a place of conflict. He pauses, searching for the right words. I taste the dust of an argument. The sun is too harsh here. The vines are thirsty and angry. The wine has a sharp edge, like a word spoken in haste. At a nearby table, a scribe, known as the KSIs, makes a note. His pen glides over the parchment, not writing about acidity or body, but about the essence the elder perceived. He writes, Cup 3, from the Western Ridge. He knows exactly which one that is. It's the vineyard where two families had a bitter boundary dispute that summer, where harsh words were exchanged under the scorching sun. The anger, the tension, the thirst of the land itself. It was all there, captured in the wine. Now, a second taster, a woman with a voice like wind through barley, reaches for a different cup. She brings it to her nose, inhaling deeply before taking a delicate sip. A slight shudder runs through her. Cold, she whispers, her voice barely audible. A long shadow, her brow furrows as she deciphers the sensation. This wine remembers a frost that touched the buds. There is grief here, a loss, but also resilience. I can taste a green shoot pushing through frozen earth. The Cases notes this down as well. Cup 7, from the high plot. He recalls the late spring frost that year, an event that had devastated the village. It had killed nearly half the crop in that specific vineyard. The community had mourned the loss. But the grapes that survived, the ones that clung to life, were small and intensely concentrated. The wine they produced carried the memory of that cold grief, but also the stubborn, hopeful strength of life persisting against the odds. It was a story of sorrow and survival, all in a single sip. Let's just pause here for a moment and really picture this scene. The quiet room, the blindfolded figures, the anonymous cups. What they are doing transcends simple tasting. It's a form of deep listening. The wine has become a psychic medium, a liquid conduit to the past. It's a library of experiences, where each bottle holds a unique story about its corner of the world. Think about the implications. This isn't just about making good wine. It's about understanding the health of their community and their land. The wine is a mirror. It reflects everything. One taster might describe the laughter of children near the harvest, and the Cases would know immediately. They were tasting wine from the vineyard next to the village school. Another might sense the patience of an old man tending his vines alone, and it would pinpoint the plot of a widowed farmer who worked his land with quiet devotion. The descriptions are direct, sensory reports from a dimension where time, place, and spirit are fused into flavor. They spoke of things that modern viticulture might dismiss as fanciful. They could taste coming rains in the wine's character, or sense that the soil is tired and needs rest. They could perceive a generosity in the earth that will not last, a warning that they needed to care for their land more thoughtfully. These weren't just poetic metaphors. For them, these were tangible truths revealed by the grape. The wine didn't just tell them what happened, it told them what was happening and what might happen next. And all the while, the Casey's listened, his pen moving swiftly over the parchment. He wasn't recording tasting notes in the way we think of them. He was transcribing a communal diagnosis of the village's spiritual and agricultural health. His scroll wasn't a wine review. It was a sacred text, a living history. Each batch of wine was a chapter in the year's story, told not by people, but through the silent, expressive medium of the vine. The blindfolds were crucial. They were not just for show. They were a tool for pure perception. By removing the sense of sight, they removed all bias. The taster wouldn't know if the wine came from a celebrated plot or a humble one. They wouldn't know if it was made by a renowned winemaker or a novice. The blindfolds ensured that the story was heard without the influence of the author's name, without prejudice or expectation. All that mattered was the truth held within the liquid itself. Looking at the Kesser's scroll, you wouldn't see words like berry, spice, or earthy. Instead, you'd see short, powerful phrases that read like a map of the village's soul. Western ridge, anger, high plot, frost, grief, resilience. Valley floor, children's laughter, old man's corner, patience, solitude. Each note was a data point, a piece of a much larger puzzle. This annual ritual was more than just quality control. It was a form of communal therapy, a town hall meeting conducted through the senses. If a wine tasted of anger, it was a sign that a conflict needed to be resolved. If it tasted of exhaustion, it was a signal that the land and perhaps its caretaker needed rest and nourishment. If it tasted of joy and laughter, it was a cause for celebration, a confirmation that life was in balance. The wine was the village's conscience. This tradition teaches us something profound. It reminds us that the things we create are never separate from us or the world we live in. They absorb our energy, our emotions, and the state of our environment. A hand-carved chair holds the patience of its maker. A home-cooked meal holds the love of the person who prepared it. And a wine, in this tradition, holds the entire story of its year. It holds the quality of the sunlight, the memory of the rain, the health of the soil, and the emotional state of the people who tended the vines. So, the next time you pour a glass of wine, or coffee, or tea, maybe try a little experiment. Close your eyes, block out the labels and the expectations. Don't try to find notes of cherry or chocolate. Instead, just listen. What story is it telling you? Does it taste of a hurried, stressful morning or a slow, peaceful afternoon? Does it feel vibrant and energetic or quiet and contemplative? You might be surprised by the landscapes and weather reports you find in your own cup. This ancient way of knowing reminds us that connection to our world isn't always intellectual. It can be sensory, intuitive, and deeply personal. It's a beautiful way to think about the world, isn't it? That everything around us, even a simple glass of wine, has a story to tell, if only we take the time to listen. The blindfolds came off. After every cup had been tasted, after every vision had been spoken and meticulously transcribed, the tasters blinked, their eyes adjusting to the light. Their faces looked pale, almost ghostly, drained from the intensity of the spiritual journey they had just undertaken. A profound silence hung in the air. They didn't speak to each other, not about what they had seen or felt. To discuss their experiences would be to contaminate the pure, unclouded water of their individual perceptions. Each vision was a sacred, personal truth, a direct communication from the land itself. Now, the most crucial part of the ceremony began. It was time for the Kes's sacred task, crafting the prophetic blend. He was the spiritual leader, the keeper of this ancient tradition. Armed with the scrolls of transcribed visions, he moved with solemn grace toward the large, central blending vat. This wasn't winemaking as the world knows it. The goal was not to create a pleasant, balanced table wine that would win awards for its taste or aroma. This was something far deeper. He was about to create a corrective, a guide, a liquid prophecy for the entire community. He held the first scroll, reading the scribe's careful notes. The wine from the western ridge, the taster had said, spoke of conflict, of a harsh and unforgiving sun. It was a hot wine, brimming with an aggressive, almost combative energy. The Keses understood immediately. This energy, unchecked, could manifest as discord within the community. So, he would blend it with a cool wine. He gestured for another jug, one that the visions described as tasting of deep shade and patient water, harvested from a sheltered, north-facing slope. The goal was to temper that aggression, to introduce a cooling influence of patience and reflection, to bring the fire back into balance with water. He then moved to the next vision. This one was heavy with sorrow, the wine that had remembered frost and grief. A vintage from a year of a late, damaging frost that had broken the hearts of the growers. It was a sad wine, carrying the memory of loss in every drop. To leave this sadness untempered would be to let a cloud of melancholy hang over the community's spirit. So, the Keses reached for a very special, very rare vintage. He measured out a tiny, almost homeopathic amount of a wine that held the essence of children's laughter, a bright, joyful vintage from a year of bountiful harvest and celebration. He was introducing a single, powerful note of hope and future into the memory of loss. Not to erase the grief, but to integrate it, to remind them that even after the deepest winter, spring eventually returns. With the focus of an alchemist and the deep, soul-level intuition of a prophet, the KSIs continued his work. He stood before the large central clay vat, a mask of solemn calculation on his face. He wasn't just mixing liquids, he was weaving together the very soul of the land. He carefully poured a measure from a smaller jug into the large one, blending not for taste, but for symbolic harmony. Each addition was a deliberate, prayerful act. He added a dash of an anxious wine, one that came from a vineyard bordering a new, busy road, its grapes carrying the nervous energy of change and disruption. He tempered this with a generous portion of a steady, generous wine sourced from the oldest, most established vines in the valley. Vines whose roots ran so deep they remembered centuries of peace and stability. He was a composer, not of music, but of energies. He was orchestrating the emotional and spiritual vibrations of the community's land, coaxing them into a single, harmonious vintage. He took the lonely wine from an isolated plot and married it with the communal wine from the village's shared vineyard. He blended the wine that spoke of ambition with the one that whispered of contentment. When the last measure had been added, a hush fell over the assembled crowd. The Keses raised his hands over the central vat and began a low, resonant chant, blessing the final blend. This was it, the culmination of the land's labor, the taster's visions, and his sacred knowledge. He declared it the wing, Ichap, yea, the wine of the year for the people. This single, unified wine would now become the lifeblood of the community's ceremonies for the next 12 months. It would be poured at weddings, sealing the union of two souls with the balanced spirit of the collective. It would be used at baptisms, welcoming new life into a community of integrated sorrows and joys. It would be drunk at harvest festivals, a toast to the land that had given them not just sustenance, but spiritual guidance. And it would be shared at funerals, offering comfort and the promise of continuity even in the face of death. To drink this wine was to ingest the balanced spirit of the community itself, reconciled conflicts, its acknowledged grief, its shared hopes for the year to come. It was a liquid prayer for harmony, made manifest through the divine language of the vine and the purified senses of the blind. The KCs then filled a single cup from the vat, holding it high for all to see. The villagers looked on with a quiet, profound reverence. They were not just watching a man hold up a cup of wine. They were witnessing the creation of their shared spiritual sustenance, the very essence of their community, captured in a liquid form. This cup held their past, their present, and their future, all blended into a perfect, harmonious whole. But the ceremony wasn't over. The work had another, equally important dimension. The individual batches of wine, the ones that had been tasted and diagnosed, were now returned to their owners. But they didn't go back alone. Each came with the Kess's notes, transcribed from the taster's visions. This was where the spiritual met the practical. A grower whose wine was identified as angry might receive a note advising him to plant a certain calming herb, like chamomile or lavender, at the edge of his field. The KSIs explained that the anger in the grapes reflected an imbalance in the land, a fever that needed to be cooled. The herbs would act as a balm, their soothing properties leaching into the soil, calming the earth, and in turn, the vines. Another grower, whose wine was described as tired or drained, might be advised to do something that seemed counterintuitive in a world of constant production, to let that parcel of land lie fallow for a year. The KSIs would explain that the land had given all it could, and now it needed to rest and replenish its energy, just as a person needs sleep. This was not a punishment, but an act of respect and care for the earth that sustained them. The farmer, with the anxious wine from the plot near the new road, was advised to build a low stone wall, not to block the road, but to create a symbolic boundary, a sense of separation and peace for the vines. The wall would act as a shield, absorbing the frantic energy of the passing world and allowing the vineyard to reclaim its tranquility. In this way, the sacred blending day was a multifaceted event. It was a profound act of spiritual creation, birthing the wine that would guide the community's soul. But it was also a deeply practical agricultural counsel. The mystical sensitivity of the blindfolded tongue, capable of perceiving the emotional state of the wine, provided direct, actionable feedback to the growers. It was a closed loop of communication between the people, the land, and the divine, all facilitated by the sacred medium of wine. It ensured that the community didn't just consume what the land offered, but listened to it, cared for it, and worked in partnership with it to maintain a state of harmony and balance, year after year. Imagine a place where the ancient world and the modern world don't just coexist, they breathe the same air, they occupy the same space. In the cool, thin atmosphere of the Ethiopian highlands, we find a winery. And inside this winery stands a man named Alem, at a crossroads made of clay and wood. To his left, a site that feels as old as the mountains themselves. Row upon row of traditional injera clay pots, what the locals call day. Their round bellies are dark, stained with the ghosts of countless fermentations. They look almost organic, as if they grew from the very floor of the warehouse. To his right, a stark contrast, stacks of new French oak barrels. Their pale, perfect staves smell of vanilla, of spice, and of forests thousands of miles away. This isn't just a storage room. It's the physical manifestation of Alem's dilemma. It's where his inheritance meets the vast, demanding world. The clay pots, the day, are his roots. They are his history, his connection to the land. He can almost see his grandfather's hands, calloused and wise, shaping these very pots from the rich, red earth of this region. When wine ferments in a day, it's not a silent, sterile process, it's a living thing. The clay is porous, it breathes. This allows for a slow, subtle exchange of air, a micro-oxidation that softens the wine, giving it a gentle, oxidative embrace that no other vessel can replicate. The clay absorbs the minerals from the soil and imparts a distinct, earthy character. It's terroir in its most literal, most honest form, a direct taste of the place it comes from. The wine from these pots is alive. It's unpredictable, changing with the seasons, with the specific clay of each pot. It's deeply connected to the rhythm of the highlands, to the wild, indigenous yeasts that float on the air. This is the wine of his community. It's the wine served at the local church, the wine poured at councils of elders, the wine that has graced his family's table for generations. It's a wine that tells a story of identity and survival. Now, turn your head to the other side of the room. The oak barrels, these are his future, or at least that's what the export market tells him. They represent a different philosophy altogether. Oak is a tool of control, of precision, of consistency. Where the clay embraces unpredictability, the oak tames it. It imparts its own powerful, and more importantly, predictable flavors. Vanilla, clove, spice, a hint of toast. These are the flavors that international sommeliers are trained to recognize and reward. This is the style that earns high points in glossy magazines and opens doors to lucrative markets in London, Paris, and New York. The wine that emerges from these barrels is polished, refined, and approachable. It speaks a global language of quality, a language understood from Tokyo to Toronto. This is the wine he labels as his signature reserve, his Highland Grand Cru. It's the wine that pays the bills. But for Alem, standing between these two worlds, the two wines are more than just different styles. They feel like entirely different substances, born of different philosophies. The clay pot wine is a conversation with the land, a partnership. The oak barrel wine feels more like a presentation to a client, a performance. To make both is to live two separate lives. To hold two conflicting truths in his hands every single day. In the cool, crisp mornings, you'll find him with the day. He moves among them with a quiet reverence, listening to the slow, gentle burble of fermentation. It's an ancient sound, the sound of indigenous yeasts doing the work they've done for millennia. It's a meditative, almost spiritual part of his day. Then, in the afternoon, his role shifts. He becomes a modern enologist. He moves to the barrels, pulling samples, using pipettes and hydrometers. He measures sulfites and acidity with scientific precision. He writes tasting notes, not with the language of his homeland, but with the lexicon of the global wine trade describing his Ethiopian grapes, with comparisons to foreign fruits he's only ever read about. Black cherry, cassis, cedar box, words that feel alien on his tongue. Let's pause for a moment and stand with him. Feel the cool air of that warehouse. Breathe in. The air itself is split. From one side, the scent of damp earth and wet clay, a primal, organic smell. From the other, the sweet, perfumed aroma of toasted wood and vanilla. One side whispers of ancestors, of tradition, of altar wine and communal celebration. The other speaks of profit margins, websites, and international distribution deals. It's the tension between soul and commerce, captured in a single room. Alem is not naive. He knows the market demands the oak. He understands the economics of survival. The polished, barrel-aged wine pays for his children's education. It buys the new, modern equipment that makes the winery more efficient. It is, in a very real sense, the key to the survival of the winery itself. Without the income from his grand cru, the day pots might fall silent forever. But a deep, gnawing anxiety accompanies every successful export shipment. He knows that every bottle of oaked wine he sells, every point it scores in a review, is another small step away from the taste that has defined his people, his land, for centuries. He sees it as a translation, and he knows that something profound, something essential, is always lost in translation. The powerful character of the French oak, as beautiful as it is, acts as a mask. It covers the raw, honest, sometimes challenging voice of the Highland grape. It dresses the wine in an elegant, expensive suit it never asked to wear, making it more palatable, more familiar to a foreign palate. His greatest fear is a quiet one he rarely speaks aloud. He fears that in his quest to please the world, to secure his family's future, he is slowly, unintentionally, erasing the very thing that made his wine unique in the first place. He's becoming a successful winemaker by sacrificing the soul of his wine. This is not just Alem's story. All over the world, in countless fields, from coffee to chocolate to ancient grains, producers face this same crossroads. How do you share your unique heritage with the world without diluting it? How do you participate in a global market without losing your local identity? Alem's hands, stained by both red clay and red wine, hold this conflict. One day, he's running his hand over the rough, cool surface of a day his grandfather might have used. The next, he's carefully checking the toast level on a brand new barrel from a French cooperage. He tastes from two glasses. In one, the cloudy, vibrant, fiercely alive wine from the clay. In the other, the clear, polished, internationally approved wine from the oak. His expression isn't one of simple preference. It's one of deep, conflicted comparison. The look of a man trying to reconcile his past and his future in a single sip. He is the guardian of a tradition and, at the same time, the agent of its transformation. And he wonders, as he looks out over the Ethiopian highlands, if it's possible for one man and one wine to truly be both. Take a look at these two bottles. They come from the same vineyard, the same hands, the same winemaker. Yet, they tell two completely different stories. This one, with its sleek, modern design, clean fonts, and a stylized drawing of a mescal flower, speaks a global language. It's designed to fit perfectly on a wine list in London, Tokyo, or New York. The back label, crafted by a consultant, talks about aromas of ripe blackberry, dark chocolate, and a hint of smoky oak. It promises a full body, supple tannins, and a long, spicy finish. It's a wine that has learned to travel, to assimilate, to be universally understood. Then there's this one. A simple clay bottle. No paper label. Its identity is burned directly into the clay with a hot iron. Maybe a simple cross, a Coptic knot, or a family symbol. If you find it in the local market, it might just have a small, handwritten tag tied with string that says, Alem's wine. From the old vines, no vintage, no tasting notes, because for the person who buys this wine, none of that is necessary. They understand, this is the wine that tastes of this place, of this soil, of this history. This is the wine that has never been taught to speak a foreign language. This profound divide isn't just about marketing. It's a story about a man named Alem and the two worlds he inhabits. Alem is the winemaker, and this duality is etched into his very soul. At international wine fairs, Alem is the polished ambassador of Ethiopia's emerging wine scene. He stands in brightly lit convention halls, dressed in a sharp suit, pouring his oaked Cabernet Sauvignon for buyers from around the world. He tells a simplified, appealing story of high-altitude vineyards and year-round sunshine. He smiles, he shakes hands, he secures orders that will send his wine across oceans. He is successful, charming, and articulate. But while he's receiving praise for his modern creation, a part of his mind is elsewhere. It's back home, in the small, dark, cool cellar where his true secrets are kept. Their traditional fermentations are quietly taking place in large clay pots or amphorae, just as they have for generations. These wines, unseen by the international buyers, feel like his secret self, his truest voice. That is where his heart is. This constant shift between worlds has made Alam a master of code switching. It's a skill many of us learn, changing how we speak and act depending on our audience. When he talks to the French importer on a video call, the conversation is a cascade of technical terms: pH levels, malolactic fermentation, bricks at harvest. He's speaking the precise, scientific language of modern enology, proving that his methods are on par with the best in the world. He shows them that his craft is not just tradition, but also science. But later that same day, the village priest might stop by to collect the wine for the Easter celebrations. With him, the conversation is entirely different. Alam doesn't talk about acid levels. He speaks of the blessings of the last rainy season, the health of the old, gnarled vine stock that his grandfather planted, and the spirit of the community. He speaks a language of faith, of nature, and of shared heritage. Is he lying to either of them? Not at all. He is simply presenting two different, equally valid truths. But the effort of holding both of these truths, of constantly translating his world for others, and then back for himself, creates a strain. It's a constant, low hum in his life, a subtle vibration like a tuning fork that has been struck but never finds its perfect, resonant match. It's the feeling of being two people in one body. The export line, the wine he privately calls the tourist wine, is an undeniable success. It's winning gold medals at international competitions and getting listed in prestigious restaurants. Each congratulatory email, each new order, should be a moment of pure joy. And it is, but it's a joy tinged with a bittersweet complexity. The praise is for the version of his heritage that has been carefully sanded down, polished, and varnished for foreign palates. It's the version that's easy to understand, easy to sell. But what about the other wine? The wine his grandfather would recognize. The one that smells of the earth after a rain and tastes of unfiltered history. That wine sits quietly in the corner of his cellar, uncelebrated by the glossy magazines and the international critics. It won't win any awards, because it isn't even entered into competitions. Its value isn't measured in points, but in its connection to a place and a people. It carries the raw, untranslated soul of their craft. Think about the process. The export wine is fermented in temperature-controlled stainless steel tanks. It's aged in imported French oak barrels to give it that familiar, smoky vanilla note that so many international consumers love. It's filtered to a brilliant clarity. Every step is about control, precision, and consistency, aimed at creating a product that is predictable and globally appealing. The traditional wine's journey is entirely different. The grapes are often crushed by foot in a large stone basin. The fermentation happens spontaneously with wild yeasts from the grape skins inside those clay pots buried in the earth. There's no temperature control beyond the natural coolness of the cellar. The wine is unfiltered, cloudy, and alive. It's unpredictable. Each pot, each vintage, is a unique conversation between the fruit, the clay, and the land. It's a process built on trust, not control. Alem feels this tension every day. When he walks through the vineyard, he sees a single grape. But he knows that grape has two potential destinies. It could become a component in a perfectly balanced, award-winning blend destined for a dinner table in Paris, or it could be part of a raw, powerful, and deeply personal wine that will be shared among friends and family during a local festival, poured from a simple clay jug. This isn't just Alam's story. It's a story we see all over the world, in food, in music, in art. It's the story of tradition navigating modernity. How do you share your culture with the world without losing the very essence of what makes it unique? How do you translate your story for a global audience while staying true to your native tongue? For Olim, the export wine pays the bills. It funds the vineyard, employs people from his community, and allows him to continue his craft. It gives him a platform on the world stage, bringing recognition to a region that has been making wine for centuries, long before many of the world's more famous wine regions even existed. He is proud of this achievement, and he should be. He is a bridge builder. But the traditional wine that feeds his soul, it's his connection to his ancestors, his legacy for his children. It's the wine he drinks with his family at the end of a long day. It's the one that reminds him why he started doing this in the first place. It's not about commerce, it's about communion. So, the next time you pick up a bottle of wine or any product from a place with a deep cultural heritage, take a moment to think about the story behind it. Is this the version that was made for you, the traveler? Or is it the version that was made for home? One is not necessarily better than the other. Both are born from the same source, the same passion, but they speak in different voices. Alam lives with these two voices every day, the polished spokesman and the quiet guardian of tradition. And in his story, we find a beautiful, complex, and deeply human truth about what it means to share a piece of your world with the rest of us. Deep beneath the gleaming chrome and polished oak of a world-class winery, a secret is breathing. It's a secret that connects the present to a past so distant it's almost myth. This is the story of Alam, a celebrated winemaker, and the hidden heart of his craft. To the world, Alam is a master of modern viticulture. His wines, aged in the finest French oak, win awards and grace the tables of connoisseurs. They speak of sophistication, of balance, of carefully controlled perfection. But this is not his whole story. This is not his truth. His truth lies hidden behind a false wall, a rack of barrels that swings inward to reveal a dark, narrow passage. This passage doesn't lead to another pristine cellar of oak and steel. It descends into the earth, into a space that feels like a tomb and a womb all at once. This is Alam's private sanctuary. Here, there is no scent of toasted oak, only the cool, damp smell of earth and clay. The walls are lined not with barrels, but with amphorea-large clay pots, known as day pots. They are ancient, some blackened with the smoke and patina of generations. Some are newer, their raw terracotta color still visible, made by Alam's own hands. Following methods his grandfather taught his father, and his father taught him. This is where he keeps his real treasure, his secret reserve. Once a year, after the frenzy of the main harvest is over and the winery staff has gone home, Alam performs a ritual. It is a solitary act of devotion. He walks to the most neglected corner of his estate, a small, gnarled vineyard that his accountants have long advised him to tear out. It yields too little, they say. The grapes are too small. But Alam knows this plot is special. It receives no modern irrigation, no tailored fertilizers, no chemical sprays. It lives on what the sky gives it, and what the deep earth provides. Its skin is dusted with the wild, native yeasts that float on the highland breeze. These are the grapes he chooses for his secret wine. He carries them not to the high-tech presses in the main winery, but to his hidden cellar. There, in the flickering light of a single lantern, he pours the bunches into a shallow stone trough, a lager carved from a single piece of rock centuries ago. He removes his boots, rolls up his trousers, and steps in. Then he begins to tread. It is a slow, rhythmic dance. The only sounds are the squish of grapes under his bare feet and his own steady breathing. It's a meditative act, a conversation between man and fruit, a scene pulled directly from another millennium. He is not just crushing grapes. He is imprinting his own energy, his own intention, into the must. Once the juice is released, he carefully transfers it, skins and all, into a new clay pot he has spent the last year preparing and seasoning. He doesn't add any commercial yeast or nutrients. He trusts the wild yeasts from the vineyard to begin the magical transformation from sugar to alcohol. He seals the pot, not with a modern airlock, but with a simple clay lid and a beeswax seal. And then he waits. He waits for the bubbling to start, to quicken, and then, over weeks, to slow and finally cease. The wine is born in silence and darkness, cradled by the earth from which it came. When the fermentation is complete, a profound moment arrives. But Alem does not reach for a glass to taste his creation. He does not analyze its chemistry or measure its alcohol content. His first act is to send a message. The message travels a day's journey away to a remote monastery perched high in the mountains. It is for one person only, Abba Gibba, a very old, blind monk. Abba Gibba is a living link to the past, the last person Alem knows who was trained in the ancient art of monastic cellarcraft, a tradition that relied on senses far beyond sight. Days later, the old monk arrives, guided by the gentle hand of a young novice. He moves with a slow, deliberate grace, his footsteps echoing softly in the cellar. Alem seats him on a simple wooden stool. The monk's face is a roadmap of time. His sightless eyes are not empty, but seem to look inward, and also outward, towards things the rest of us cannot see. He turns his head towards the row of clay pots, as if sensing their silent, waiting presence. The air is thick with anticipation. For Alem, this is the most important moment of his year. With a small clay ladle, Alem carefully draws a sample of the new wine. The liquid is cloudy, unfiltered, deeply colored. He pours it into a small clay cup and places it into the monk's outstretched hands. The old man's fingers, gnarled with age, wrap around the cup, feeling its temperature, its texture. He lifts it, not to his lips, but to his nose. He holds it there for a long time, inhaling deeply, his brow furrowed in concentration. The world seems to shrink to this single, sacred moment. Alem watches, his heart pounding, his own breath held tight in his chest. Finally, Abba Gibba takes a small sip. He doesn't swallow. He lets the wine rest on his tongue, rolling it gently, his expression unreadable. The silence stretches on. Alem knows the monk is not searching for notes of cherry or hints of spice. He is not a modern sommelier. He is something far older. He is a reader of essences. When he finally speaks, his voice is a low, quiet murmur, like stones shifting at the bottom of a river. He never speaks of flavors. He speaks of feelings, of character, of the soul of the wine. I taste the patience of the deep roots, he might say, his head tilted. There was a struggle with the rock this year, a deep thirst, but the vine did not yield. The wine has a quiet courage. Another year, he might nod slowly and whisper, "Ah, there is a forgiveness in this vintage. The land has let go of the memory of last season's dryness. It is a generous wine." He is translating the language of the soil. The sun, the rain, and the vines struggle into human words. He is reading the biography of the year, written in liquid. This is the only judgment Alem seeks, the only review he trusts. It is more valuable to him than a 100-point score from the world's most famous critic. The monk's words tell him if he has been a faithful translator, if he has succeeded in capturing the unadulterated truth of that specific place, in that specific year. If Abba Gibber finds courage or forgiveness in the wine, Alem knows he has done his job. He has honored the pact. This wine, this liquid truth, is never sold. It is never entered into competitions. Its existence is known to only a handful of people. A few precious bottles are reserved for the most profound moments of life. He gave one to his father on his deathbed, a taste of the earth his father had once farmed. He gave a bottle to his daughter on her wedding day, a blessing from the ancestors. A small portion always goes back to the monastery, a tithe of gratitude to Abba Gibber and the tradition he embodies. The rest of the bottles remain here, in the cool, silent dark of the cellar. They form a growing library of vintages, each one a unique chapter in the long story of this land. Each pot is a time capsule, a message to the future. This secret reserve is Alem's anchor. In a world that demands consistency, predictability, and polish, this is his connection to the wild, untamable heart of winemaking. The world may drink his commercial wines and praise him as a successful, modern professional. But here, alone in the dark, surrounded by clay and the memory of the blind monk's words, he is something more elemental. He is a guardian. He is a translator not of words, but of place and time. He is keeping an ancient language alive, a language spoken by the soil, the sky, and the vine. And even if its audience is just one old, blind monk, the act of speaking, it is what matters. As long as he performs this yearly ritual, as long as he steps into the stone lagar and trusts the wild yeasts, the ancient bond between the highland earth and the human hand remains unbroken. The secret breathes on, a quiet, courageous heart beating deep beneath the modern world. Welcome back, under the baobab. The fire before us is a bed of gentle, glowing coals, and our journey through the highlands of wine is complete. We have descended into the prayer-soaked silence of monastic cellars, where wine ages beside chance and becomes a liquid memory. We have stood in the guarded halls of the royal brewmasters, where honey, wine, or tej held the fate of dynasties in its golden depth. We have witnessed the blindfolded tasters, their palates so refined they could transform taste into prophecy for their community. And we have stood with Alem in his divided warehouse, feeling the pull of the ancient clay pot, the beryl, and the modern oak barrel, the pull of deep-rooted tradition, and the pull of the wider world. It's a tension that runs through the very heart of this ancient land. The story of the winemakers of Ethiopia is, at its core, a story about listening. The monks listened to their prayers seep into the barrels, believing each whispered verse added a layer of sanctity. The brewmasters listened to the hum of fermentation, the subtle shift in aroma, and the secrets of spices like gesho that gave their honey wine its unique character. The village tasters listened to the land speak through the grape, identifying the subtle notes of the volcanic soil, the hint of the high-altitude sun. And Alem, he listens to two masters, the quiet, persistent voice of his heritage and the loud, insistent call of the global market. Let's take a final, soft pause. The night is deep and still around us. In that stillness, perhaps we can hear the essence of it all. Wine here is not merely a product, it is a relationship, a living, breathing connection. A relationship between sun and soil, between human hands and patient time, between spirit and substance. It's a covenant made with the earth, renewed with every harvest. This brings us to the dilemma of the modern maker, a challenge that echoes far beyond these highlands. It's the dilemma of our age. How do you share a sacred local truth with a wide world that may not have the ears or the palate to hear it in its original tongue? Must it be translated to be understood, to be sold? And if so, how much of its soul is lost in that translation? Alem's answer is both a compromise and a quiet rebellion. He sells the translation, the oak-aged, internationally palatable wine, to survive, to keep his vineyards thriving. But in his hidden cellar, he keeps the original text, the true script written in the language of clay and guarded by the wisdom of generations. It's a private act of preservation, a refusal to let the old ways die completely. The true wine of Ethiopia was never meant to be a mere beverage. It was, and for some, it still is, a sacrament, a vessel for prayer, a test of kings, a mirror for the community, a whispered conversation with the land itself, whether sipped from a golden horn at a coronation ceremony, thousands of years ago, or from a humble clay cup in a sun-drenched courtyard today. It carries within it the same essential elements: the highland sun, the monastic chant, the beekeeper's song, and the vintner's hope. It's the taste of history, a liquid archive of a culture that has weathered empires and famine, celebration and sorrow. It is a testament to the resilience of a people who have learned to coax poetry from the earth. The fire's light fades, the story of the alchemists of honey and grape is told. The coals glow with the memory of our shared time here. We hope this journey has opened not just a new chapter in the world of wine for you, but a new way of seeing, of tasting, and of listening. Thank you for joining us. You are under Baobab skies.